The distress call came at 200 hours, cutting through Lieutenant Mara Huxley's dreamless sleep like a scalpel. She jolted upright in her quarters, the soft blue emergency light pulsing along the curved walls of her sleep pod. Medical emergency in Sector 7. Repeat, medical emergency in Sector 7. Lieutenant Huxley to medbay immediately. Mara was moving before consciousness fully returned, muscle memory guiding her hands to seal her uniform and grab her medical kit. Mistral Alpha's corridors were eerily quiet at this hour, the night cycle lighting casting long shadows as she sprinted toward the medical wing. Planetary Alliance's 47th Battalion had been stationed at this remote outpost for 8 months now. Positioned on the fringes of Alliance space, Mistral Alpha served as both military deterrent and research facility. The political tensions with the Outer Rim Coalition had been escalating for months, but the outpost had remained untouched by direct conflict. Until now, perhaps. The medbay doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, chaos reigned. 3 Special Forces operatives lay on gurneys, their bodies convulsing. Nurse Lee Santos was already there, moving between patients with practiced efficiency. But the panic in his eyes was unmistakable. "What happened?" Mara demanded, pulling on her medical gloves and activating her diagnostic tablet. "Special Ops team returned from perimeter sweep an hour ago," Lee explained, voice tight. "They collapsed during decontamination. Fever, respiratory distress, neurological symptoms consistent with..." A shrill alarm cut through the air, red lights flashing overhead. Mara's blood ran cold as the facility's biosensors registered a level red contamination alert. "Biological agent detected," announced the station's AI in its flat, emotionless voice. "Containment protocols initiated." Mara met Lee's gaze across the room. They both knew what this meant. No training exercise, no drill. "Lock down the medbay," she ordered. "Full isolation protocols. And get me Major Wu immediately." As Lee moved to secure the facility, Mara bent over the nearest patient. Special Forces Lieutenant Riker's skin was flushed crimson, veins darkening beneath his skin. His breathing came in short, desperate gasps. "Lieutenant, can you hear me?" she asked, inserting an IV line with practiced ease. Riker's eyes fluttered open, bloodshot and unfocused. "Something in the perimeter," he gasped. "Canister breach." Before he could say more, his body arched in a violent seizure, forcing Mara to stabilize him. The station's biological sensors continued their relentless warning, the red alert lights bathing the sterile white room in an apocalyptic glow. Major Elena Wu's face appeared on the communication screen, her expression grim. "Lieutenant Huxley, report. 3 patients with symptoms consistent with biological weaponry exposure." "Ma'am," Mara replied, not looking up from her patient. "Request immediate lockdown of the entire medical wing and activation of the emergency response team." Wu's eyes narrowed. "Are you certain this is biological warfare?" "The biosensors confirmed it, and symptoms match multiple known agents. We need to act now before it spreads through the air recycling system." A moment of tense silence followed as Wu calculated options. Military protocol would demand evacuation and potential abandonment of the infected personnel. Medical protocol demanded treatment and containment. The two were often at odds. "Initiate rapid response exercise," Wu finally ordered, using the designated code phrase that would mobilize the entire medical unit without causing station-wide panic. "Full authority granted to Medical Division until further notice." The screen went dark. Mara had what she needed: emergency powers and the ability to override standard protocols. "Lee, get every medical officer on duty now. Seal all ventilation to other sectors and activate the emergency filtration system." As Lee rushed to comply, Mara turned to her diagnostic tablet. The biological agent wasn't registering in their database. Either it was completely new or deliberately engineered to evade detection. Either way, they were flying blind. Within minutes, The med bay filled with medical personnel in hazmat suits. Dr. Eliza Navarro, the station's chief pathologist, arrived with portable lab equipment. Samples from all 3 patients, Mara instructed, handing over sealed vials. Priority analysis. We need to know what we're dealing with. Tactical Lieutenant Kai Mendez burst through the doors, his face hardening as he took in the scene. Wu sent me to coordinate security. What's the situation? Biological attack, Mara replied tersely. Unknown agent, 3 confirmed cases, potentially airborne. We need to track the source and secure all access points. Mendez's expression darkened. An attack? That means we have a breach. Or worse, an insider, Mara finished for him. I know, but right now, my priority is saving lives and preventing spread. My men can help with containment, but I need to know. The conversation halted as a 4th patient was rushed in, a maintenance worker who'd been near the environmental systems. The disease was spreading through the ventilation system despite their efforts. Secure the research lab, Mara ordered Mendez. We need access to everything in there, including restricted biosamples. Authorization code Huxley Epsilon 9. Mendez hesitated. That's against security protocol. This is a rapid response exercise, Mara countered, using the code phrase deliberately. Medical authority supersedes standard protocol. Their eyes locked in silent battle before Mendez nodded curtly and departed. Mara knew the friction between medical and tactical divisions was inevitable, but she had no time for bureaucratic squabbles. Lives depended on speed now. As the hours passed, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The environmental systems had spread the agent throughout much of the station before they could isolate it. The medical bay filled beyond capacity, with makeshift beds lining the corridors. Medical staff worked around the clock, many beginning to show early symptoms themselves. Dr. Navarro's analysis confirmed their worst fears. It's a genetically modified virus, she explained, displaying the molecular structure on the main screen. Engineered to target the respiratory system first, then the nervous system. I've never seen anything like it. Can we synthesize an antidote? Mara asked, exhaustion evident in her voice. 36 hours without sleep was taking its toll. Navarro shook her head. Not without the original strain or a sample of the weapon itself. This is too sophisticated for us to reverse engineer quickly. A message from Mendez interrupted them. His face appeared on the communication screen, tight with controlled anger. We found something. Research Lab 3 shows signs of unauthorized access. Security footage has been wiped, but we recovered fragments. You need to see this. The screen switched to grainy footage showing a figure in a lab coat working alone late at night. Despite the poor quality, the face was recognizable. Dr. Donovan Rax, one of their own biological research scientists. He accessed the secure pathogens vault 3 times last week. Mendez reported. We're searching for him now, but he's nowhere on the station. Must have left on the supply shuttle yesterday. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Rax had been with them for over a year, eaten meals with them, worked alongside them, gained their trust. Find anything he left behind, Mara ordered. Notes, samples, anything that might help us develop a countermeasure. Already on it. We've locked down his quarters and lab space. By the 50th hour, the situation had become desperate. Over 100 personnel were infected, with the first deaths occurring among those with compromised immune systems. The makeshift quarantine was holding, but supplies were running dangerously low. Communications with Alliance Command brought promises of assistance, but the nearest support ship was still days away. In Rax's quarters, they found encoded research notes, incomplete, but enough to understand the basic structure of his bioweapon. It had been designed with a specific weakness, a fail-safe even the most ruthless bioweapon engineers included to protect themselves. It's deliberately vulnerable to a specific protein sequence, Dr. Navarro explained, reviewing the fragmented data. but synthesizing it would take specialized equipment we don't have here. Mara looked up from the patient she was treating, Lee Santos, who had collapsed hours earlier after showing symptoms. Her friend and colleague now fought for each breath, his normally vibrant face ashen. "What about adaptation?" she asked. "Could we modify existing treatments?" Navarro frowned. "Possibly, but it would require testing, human testing. We don't have time for proper protocols." The unspoken question hung in the air. Who would volunteer to test an experimental treatment that could kill as easily as it could cure? "Use me," Mara said quietly. "I'll be the test subject." "Lieutenant, that's a direct order. Doctor," Mara cut her off, "I'm still in command of medical, and this is my decision." Before anyone could protest further, the station's emergency systems blared with a new warning. The environmental systems were failing under the strain of emergency filtration. Oxygen levels would become critical within hours. Mara stared at the warning lights, then at Lee's struggling form. There was no more time for debate. "Prepare the prototype treatment," she commanded, "and get me Major Wu." Wu's face appeared on screen, the strain of command evident in the new lines around her eyes. "Lieutenant, status report. We've identified the agent and developed a potential countermeasure," Mara reported. "But it's untested. Request permission for emergency human trials." Wu's expression remained impassive. "Risks. Unknown. Potentially fatal. I'm volunteering myself as the first subject." A long silence followed. "Permission granted," Wu finally said. "Whatever it takes. Lieutenant, save my people." The experimental treatment burned like fire in Mara's veins. She lay on a gurney in the isolation room, diagnostic sensors monitoring every change in her body. Dr. Navarro watched anxiously through the observation window as Mara's body reacted to the modified antibodies. Fever, chills, blurred vision. Each symptom hit with increasing intensity as the treatment fought the virus for dominance in her system. Hours passed in a haze of pain and semi-consciousness. Then, gradually, clarity returned. The fever broke. Breathing eased. "It's working," Navarro's voice came through the speakers, a rare note of hope in her tired voice. "Your viral load is decreasing. We're starting mass production immediately." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of activity. The medical team, reinvigorated by hope, worked tirelessly to produce and administer the treatment to every infected patient. Mara, still weak but determined, insisted on rejoining the effort, moving from bed to bed alongside her team. When they reached Lee's bed, his condition had deteriorated significantly. His oxygen levels were dangerously low, his systems beginning to shut down. "He's too far gone," one of the junior doctors whispered. "The treatment won't—" "Administer it anyway," Mara ordered, taking the injector herself. "Double dose and get the cardio stimulator ready." She leaned close to Lee's ear as she pressed the injector to his neck. "Don't you dare give up on me, Santos. That's an order." For agonizing hours, Lee hovered between life and death, his body struggling to respond to the treatment. Mara refused to leave his side, monitoring every fluctuation, adjusting the treatment as needed. When his eyes finally fluttered open, recognition slowly dawning in them, the entire medical team erupted in exhausted cheers. "Did we win?" Lee whispered, his voice barely audible. Mara squeezed his hand. "We're winning. Rest now." By the 72nd hour, the tide had turned. No new cases emerged, and the majority of patients showed significant improvement. The environmental system stabilized, oxygen levels returning to normal ranges. Major Wu called an all-hands briefing from the command center, her image projected throughout the station. "Thanks to the extraordinary efforts of our medical team, the rapid response exercise has been successfully concluded," she announced. deliberately maintaining the cover story to prevent panic. Lieutenant Huxley and her team have demonstrated exceptional skill and courage, setting a new standard for emergency response. Only the highest-ranking officers knew the truth, that they had survived a deliberate attack, an act of biological warfare from within their own ranks. In the medbay, the atmosphere had transformed from desperate crisis to exhausted relief. Medical personnel collapsed into chairs or against walls, the adrenaline that had sustained them finally giving way to bone-deep fatigue. Mara sat beside Lee's bed, reviewing recovery data on her tablet. The door slid open, and Lieutenant Mendez entered, looking as exhausted as the rest of them but carrying himself with military precision. "Lieutenant Huxley," he greeted formally, then softened. "Mara, I came to inform you personally. We've confirmed Rax left on yesterday's supply shuttle. Alliance Command has been notified, and pursuit vessels have been dispatched." "Will they catch him?" Mendez hesitated. "Unknown, but we found something else in his quarters. Communications with an Outer Rim operative. He wasn't working alone." Mara absorbed this news silently. The attack wasn't over. It had merely been the first wave. "The station is secure now," Mendez continued, "but we'll need to implement new security protocols. I'd like your input on the medical aspects." It was an olive branch, tactical, acknowledging medical as an equal partner in station security, not just a support function. "Of course," Mara agreed. "Once my patients are stable." Mendez nodded, understanding the priority. Before leaving, he paused. "What you did, using yourself as a test subject, that was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen." A ghost of a smile touched Mara's lips. "In medicine, sometimes those are the same thing." 2 weeks later, the station had returned to a semblance of normalcy. The infected had recovered, though some would need ongoing treatment for neurological damage. The environmental systems had been completely overhauled, new safeguards installed. Mara stood in the observation lounge, watching the distant stars through the reinforced viewport. The door opened behind her, and Major Wu entered, her uniform impeccable as always. "Lieutenant," Wu acknowledged, "you should be resting." "I've rested enough, Major." Wu moved to stand beside her, both women gazing out at the stars in silence for a moment. "Alliance Command has reviewed my report," Wu finally said. "They've approved commendations for the entire medical team. You're being promoted to Lieutenant Commander." Mara shook her head. "I don't need a promotion. I need better equipment, more staff, and expanded authority for preventative measures." A hint of a smile touched Wu's normally stern face. "Those have been approved as well, along with your appointment as Chief Medical Officer for the entire sector." Surprise rendered Mara momentarily speechless. "We were lucky this time," Wu continued, her voice hardening. "The next attack may come in a different form. Intelligence suggests Rax was just one agent in a larger network. There will be others." "We'll be ready," Mara replied with quiet determination. "Yes, we will." Wu turned to face her directly. "I'm authorizing a joint tactical medical task force. You and Mendez will co-lead. Find the vulnerabilities before they can be exploited again." It was an unprecedented step, elevating medical security to the same level as tactical operations. A recognition that in this new kind of warfare, scalpels could be as important as rifles. "When do we start?" Mara asked. "You already have." Wu handed her a data tablet. "These are the personnel files of everyone who joined the station in the last 18 months. Rax couldn't have worked alone. Someone helped him access restricted areas, falsified security logs. The implication was clear. The enemy wasn't just out there among the stars. They might still be here, walking the corridors, waiting for the next opportunity. "I'll find them," Mara promised. Later that evening, Mara visited the recovering patients in the medical wing. Most had been discharged to their quarters, but a few remained under observation, including Lee. "Commander Huxley," he greeted her with a weak smile, noting the new rank insignia she hadn't yet grown accustomed to. "Coming to check your miracle cure is still working?" "Something like that." She sat beside his bed, running a professional eye over his monitoring equipment. "How's the peripheral neuropathy?" "Better. I can feel my fingers again." He demonstrated by wiggling them. "The nightmares are worse than the physical symptoms, though." Mara nodded understanding. The virus had caused vivid hallucinations in many patients during the acute phase. Those mental scars would take longer to heal than the physical ones. "They're saying you saved everyone," Lee continued. "The hero of Mistral Alpha." Mara shook her head. "We saved everyone. Every medical officer, every nurse, every technician who stayed at their post despite the risk. It was never just me." "Still," Lee insisted, "not many commanding officers would use themselves as a test subject. Any of you would have done the same. Maybe. But we didn't have to. Because you did it first." He studied her face. "What happens now?" Mara's expression turned serious. "Now we prepare. This wasn't a random attack. Lee, it was targeted, precise, and if Rax could infiltrate us, others can too." "You think there are more infiltrators on the station?" "I think we can't rule it out." She stood, smoothing her uniform. "Rest, recover. I'm going to need my best nurse back on duty soon." As she turned to leave, Lee called after her. "Mara, when it was worst, I remember hearing your voice, ordering me not to give up." A pause. "Thank you for that." She nodded, momentarily unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. In the corridor outside, Mendez was waiting, data tablet in hand. "Security sweep of Sector 12 is complete," he reported. "Nothing unusual. We're moving to Sector 13 next." "I want to check the biological research archives personally," Mara replied. "If there's another agent, they might try to access backup samples." Mendez nodded agreement. "I'll assign a tactical team to accompany you." As they walked together through the station's corridors, the routine sounds of a military installation continuing its mission surrounded them. Communications chatter, the hum of equipment, personnel going about their duties. On the surface, everything had returned to normal. But beneath that normalcy, a new vigilance had taken root. The attack had transformed Mistral Alpha from a remote outpost to the front line of an invisible war. Mara glanced sideways at Mendez as they walked, once adversaries of sorts, now reluctant partners in this new battle. Medical and tactical, science and security, forced to work in harmony against an enemy that exploited the gaps between them. "We'll find them," Mendez said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "Whoever helped Rax, whoever's still out there, we'll find them." Mara nodded, her resolve hardening. "Yes, we will." In the medical lab, she paused to look at the samples of the neutralized virus, securely contained but preserved for study. A weapon turned into a tool. Destruction transformed into knowledge. That transformation, she realized, mirrored what had happened to the station itself and to her. Crisis had forged something stronger, more vigilant, more unified. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The emergency lights had long since returned to their standard blue. The crisis had passed. But as Mara knew all too well, in medicine as in war, the end of one battle was merely preparation for the next. And when that battle came, they would be ready.